But my favorite part that was about to come out comes up at the very end of this, and they had hinted at it earlier.
Yep.
That Lieutenant Kirk was supposed to be one of the people amongst the crew. And so finally, as we're getting into the denouement and the wrap-up of this episode, hey, Lieutenant Kirk's coming. And onto the bridge walks George Samuel, a.k.a. Sam Kirk. Kirk's brother from the Operation Annihilate episode.
That episode where William Shatner's wearing that molestache.
Yeah, he's got the molester stash, and raviolis stick to your back and kill you. I thought it was kind of a cool bait and switch that they pulled. Because they'd let the info out. Hey, yeah, you know what? Season 2, Captain Kirk's going to be there. So when you first heard that they're waiting for Lieutenant Kirk, did you think, oh, well, of course. You know, because they'd already let it out. And then when it shows up and it's Sam, you're like, oh, you devious little monkeys.
Yeah, I did initially assume that it was James Tiberius.
Yeah. And those two names next to each other. You got James Tiberius Kirk and George Samuel Kirk. It's like each parent named one of them, you know? And then we didn't really get to meet him yet, but Lieutenant Hemmer, the new engineer, is coming on board. And they get clearance to depart. Spock says everything's go. Ortegas asks what the course should be, what the mission is, and then Pike gives them the opening voiceover.
Yeah, I really liked his voiceover on that.
Yeah. I was stoked. Now, how much of that was just me being soaked in nostalgia, I couldn't tell you.
Well, I think they did a good job with it.
I do too. I think there's lots of room for them to grow, lots of places for this show to go. One of the things I'm concerned with is I don't want to constantly see Pike seeing himself in his post-Delta Ray state. Like, they pulled it up 4 times in this episode. I think that was a little heavy. I get why they did it. They were trying to set the character, but I don't want that to be like a weekly thing.
Yeah, hopefully they were just doing it this time just to let you know that it happens, and they don't really need to address it again unless the story calls for it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can take it out here and there as you need to. It just doesn't need to be constantly a plate of nachos in a mirror, you know?
Yeah, every time he looks at a reflection of himself.
Yeah. Can you imagine how hard shaving would be in that situation?
Surely they have some robot on the ship that does all that.
I would hope so. You know, by that time in the future. What were your closing thoughts? What did you take away from this episode?
It was a good start. It was a good first episode, I think. And since they, they kind of got the first handful of episode kind of staggering out of the way in Discovery, this one felt fairly smooth. There was no, weirdness going on while they try to find their feet, I guess.
No, this felt like a fully formed show that was ready to go.
Yeah, like I said, I think they got all that out of their system for the most part, that second season of Discovery, so it was an easy transition over to this one.
I have to say that, obviously, when you saw the original Star Trek, that was all, when I did, it was all in reruns, and you weren't meant to watch them in order. By the time the next gen came along, the first episode had to do a lot more heavy lifting because a lot of people were just kind of going to give it a chance. Out of all the newly launched Star Trek shows I have watched, this has been my favorite first episode.
Yeah, I really want them to not go super over the top with fan service.
No, they really need to be careful about that.
When they brung Kirk's brother on board, I was like, come on.
That was a fairly deep cut, too, because, even I don't often consider the fact that Kirk had a brother.
For sure, but, given Kirk is a major player in the Star Trek universe, it's the same thing. It's the same issue I have with La'an, too. The fact that her last name is Noonien Singh. So, obviously, they're connected in some way. Otherwise, why use that last name?
Oh, absolutely. And I have some issues with that because not only is there a lot of con-adjacent info happening in this show, there was a lot in Picard as well. And it ended with some con-specific things happening, but it also ended with references to the riots and things that were going to happen in the future, like in the not-too-distant future in the Star Trek universe. So I'm a little concerned that they might steep themselves a little too tightly to, hey, everything's connected, and I hate when they do that.
I don't have a problem with it as long as it's done properly. And again, Marvel has shown that you can do it for the most part, but most other IPs get it super wrong.
Yeah, but I just mean when everything ties back together, it starts to make a universe feel small. Like in Star Wars when Phantom Menace came out, and it turned out that all the villains from A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back all grew up with Anakin on Tatooine, you know? It's just one of those things, like, it just makes everything too small.
Yeah, they really got to be careful with the fan service stuff. Because, yeah, like I said, that Kirk one, I was like, come on. I thought it was dumb already that they were introducing any kind of Lieutenant Kirk. And then when it turned out to be his brother, I was like, okay, you got me, but calm it down.
Yeah. No, you're right. Because it was one of those things where I was like, okay, you've done it. Now chill out. Just maybe do less of that from now on.